prosecute him for contempt of court.
They are literally more powerful than any international court. They can't even get a goddamn government. Chevron is bigger than America. What are you supposed to do? Boy, the environmental disaster.
So you might have heard of Chernobyl, or the BP oil spill, or even Exxon Valdez. What if I told you that there's an even worse natural catastrophe in the Amazon that no one knows about? The craziest part is it was done on purpose.
Oh, they shot
right? The company that did this can destroy entire communities whenever it wants. It can like lock up anyone who gets in their way. And best of all,
with Donziger, they shot in LA.
They don't have to pay tax. Now, we're talking about Chevron, and their headquarters are right behind this wall, right? Now, you might think we're here to cause a scene and be really annoying, but there's one thing you should know about us, is that we love power and we love oil. So we're here to get a job.
Do we just go up the...
Okay, maybe they didn't shoot this part in LA. I think this is... I suspect that they shot this in... Did they shoot this in Australia?
Just oil.
Chevron wasn't making this easy. You know, we're just here to get a job, and we quickly realized no one wanted to help us. They just kept sending us back and forth.
Would you be able to give them my resume in case they come down?
Actually, they are going to take it. I'm not taking it.
You don't want to take it?
Well, mine, it's a little bit less than
It turns out we might have been in the wrong building, but security gave us a pass to go upstairs just to be sure. We don't want to miss out on this job.
Yeah, they're not here.
They're not here.
They're not here. They must have moved out 3 years ago.
So what are we doing?
I don't know.
There were just a bunch of empty offices where Chevron used to be, so we decided to leave and give up on our dreams of working for a big oil company.
Hello.
I think we got the wrong building.
Our big oily dreams were completely shattered, but out of nowhere, a friendly security guard told us where to go.
So, it's something doing in the building for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I know. It's like that.
Mascot.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, so there is building.
Finding a job isn't easy, you know? Sometimes you make mistakes.
You know what they say, the key to any new job is persistence, so we showed up at the new headquarters.
I just want to get a job with the oil company.
Yeah, we've got our resumes here. As you can see, we're very oily men.
Just come out the front for us?
Wait,
Go on the front.
Go in there?
No.
You
It's
go
a
on?
security risk here.
Oh, it's
Why?
dangerous in there.
No, it's just a security risk here. You can't get access to the building.
Okay,
How do
even
we-
if we're this oily?
Yes.
Okay. We thought you guys love oil, though.
I want to get a job. Can you guys give our resumes to someone?
Yeah,
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
They are a bit oily.
So we can't get a job here? Cool.
So we've had some kind of misunderstanding. Chevron doesn't want to hire us today, but also we're also not allowed within 100 meters of Chevron or any of its subsidiaries, which is a bit of an overreaction. Look, I'm not an idiot. Like, I know this looks bad. I understand how it looks, but Chevron, if you're listening, I'm not some kind of like creepy, unhinged stalker that's making videos about you on the internet. No, I'm a normal guy. I'm just a regular, well-adjusted person, and I'd also make an asset to your company.
Bro did not get a job at Chevron. He is putting the fries in the bag. Stick to your day job.
We just need to, if you let me explain it from the start, you'll understand. So if we go to the beginning, which is, it actually all started, pretty much around, where to start, it's wide, aha!
Here, in 1541, when Spanish explorer Francisco de Orellana first set sail down the Amazon River in Ecuador looking for El Dorado, the mythical city of gold. Now, spoiler alert, he did not find a city made of gold, but he did find a lot of rocks made of gold, and silver, and iron, and copper, and slaves, and fruit, and coffee, and slaves. All the Europeans had to do was kill 56 million people, and before you know it, everyone got in line. South America became a never-ending conveyor belt, kind of like this belt grinder here. It just keeps going in circles, loading up stuff on this end and emptying it all in Europe on this end. And that's me. I'm Europe in this analogy. Now, the real-life conveyor belt is even better than this because, you know, unlike a belt grinder, it doesn't hurt your face when you use it. It pretty much just gives you free stuff for like the next 500 years and counting. Like, eventually, Chevron will make really good use of this conveyor belt to like suck all the oil out of South America and, you know, make one of the worst environmental catastrophes we've ever seen. But that's for later in the story. For the first couple of centuries,
He chipped his tooth doing that? That's insane, dude. What the is... God, these guys are so ridiculous.
it was primarily used for gold and a couple of other weird things like cigarettes and purple shirts. I don't know, Europeans love that stuff for some reason. But my point is, it's a solid conveyor belt. Even when the South Americans eventually kicked out the Western powers and started ruling themselves, the conveyor belt stayed intact. Over the next 100 years, every now and then they would elect someone who wanted to keep all these profits in South America. But the CIA would just organize a military coup and replace them with a more business-friendly leader, i.e., someone who would make sure Western companies got all the profits. Ecuador is a great example. I mean, look at Jose Maria Velasco Ibarra. I mean, you don't have to look at him. What you need to know is that he got the most votes anyone's ever gotten in Ecuador. He was voted in as president 5 times, but the only problem is he never got to complete a full term in power because every time he got voted in, he'd immediately be kicked out by a military coup and replaced with a pro-US leader. My man started getting used to it, but the final time he got voted in and then immediately kicked out was extra special, since it coincided with the discovery of huge amounts of oil in the Ecuadorian Amazon. Now, Jose wanted to nationalize the oil and have the profits returned to Ecuador instead of going to giant Western oil companies like Chevron. So, obviously, the military did a coup and removed him from power. Now, at the time of the coup, all television stations went off the air. 6 million Ecuadorians had no idea that a military takeover was happening, but somehow an American company called Texaco knew exactly what was going on, and funnily enough, the military government's first order of business was to grant Texaco full rights to Ecuador's oil, which is a crazy coincidence. But what's even more of a coincidence is that every time a new leader took the reins of this newly formed Ecuadorian military dictatorship, he'd have to assure Washington that he had no plans to nationalize the oil industry if he wanted to stay in power. Now, with Ecuador's pesky democracy out of the way, Texaco went to town on the Amazon, digging up all of Ecuador's resources for free and keeping all the profits for themselves. Now, over time, the very hungry oil company drank up so much free oil and just grew and grew and grew that eventually Texaco merged with Chevron, which made 2 very big oil companies become one of the biggest companies in the world. But the fun ended in 1992. The Ecuadorians finally managed to nationalize their oil and they drove the oil giant out of the country. But this is where the horror show really started. I mean, the Ecuadorians finally got full control of the oil fields and they got a glimpse of what this company's been doing in the Amazon for the past 20 years. There were always rumors of what was going on deep in the rainforest. While the company was in charge, local tribes occasionally complained that their water tasted different. But the oil company brushed them aside and said, "Don't worry about the taste of the water, drink it up. We've done you a favor and filled it with special vitamins that are good for you, actually." And it turns out they did exactly what you'd expect a giant corporation to do in a third world country where they had complete control over the government. They decided to dump 72 billion litres of toxic waste into the pristine rainforest rivers because it was, cheaper than disposing of it properly. They wiped out multiple local communities, they poisoned and scarred their bodies and destroyed all their food and water, causing what experts have called the Amazon Chernobyl. So yeah, it turns out their oil company didn't put vitamins in the water, which is...
Wait, I don't get it. But I thought America was good. And a lot of the information in this video is leading me to feel like American corporations have done a lot of bad. Can someone please frame this in a way that makes sense to me so it doesn't harm my liberal sensibilities that include that America gets to have its private for-profit businesses go to other countries and suck up the natural resources at the behest of the profit motive while simultaneously destroying the natural the natural water supply, wildlife, indigenous population. I don't get it.
It's very sneaky. But we decided to talk to Steven Donziger about it. He's a lawyer who fought for the people of Ecuador. Chevron actually ended up throwing him in prison, which makes him the only American citizen in history to be locked up by a private corporation. But
in a not a criminal trial, by the way, but a civil one.
We'll get into that later. First, we want to talk about what he saw in the Amazon in the 90s. Now, the only problem is he lives all the way over here in New York, so we decided to meet...
Didn't you interview him? Yeah, Steven is the GOAT. He's dope.
In the middle, in sunny Kiribati. But it turns out Chevron won't let him leave the country, so we decided to meet in sunny LA. At a beautiful, pristine park in the middle of the city that's also somehow home to a bunch of Chevron's oil pumps.
It's such a good shot, just an oil well. It looks like it's drilling into your head.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's really funny.
I guess we'll start from the beginning. What did you find in the Amazon? What happened down there?
it's
This
sort
was
of
in LA.
hard to describe how bad it is in Ecuador. Like what they did is just apocalyptic. And I remember seeing a lot of bad, but I remember going over like a hill in the car we were in. In the distance, I saw what looked like a lake. It was sunny and it was like glistening in the sun. And as we got closer, he's like, "That's not a lake." I'm like, "Well, what is it?" He goes, "That's an oil spill."
It was that large.
But this was the crazy part. We get near the lake, it's hot as hell. You smell the vapors. They're awfully harmful. It's like you can't even hang out there that long, you start getting headaches. And as we got up to the lake, I saw these two indigenous men like wading with no shirts on, no protection, through the lake with like mops. And they were like shoveling the oil into bags. And then like coming out the side, they had oil over them and putting the bags like on the ground. And then going back in the lake and wading and doing the same thing. Like Texaco deliberately created this system. This was not an oil spill. Yeah. This was not an accident. This was an engineered design to dump systematically literally millions of gallons of toxic waste into a pristine, beautiful ecosystem that indigenous peoples relied on for their sustenance, had relied on for thousands of years. In a few short years, they poisoned the whole thing. And since the land can't support them anymore, they're left to take jobs, like pay nothing, virtually nothing, to sit there and do this futile exercise of mopping up an oil lake with your bare damn hands.
While there's a pipe that's still...
Yeah, exactly.
Feeding it in.
It was at this point that Stephen remembered that he was, in fact, a lawyer. He can represent these indigenous Ecuadorians who had never set foot in a courtroom before.
Ellos van a estar ahí.
There you go. I did it. I was able to avoid the brief moment of nudity, apparently, at 10:10.
Sentado arriba, con sus trajes, sus corbatas, etc. No tengo.
These motherfuckers be in prison, but we're too busy locking up homeless people for existing. Wait till you find out who actually gets locked up in this story. Because not only did we not jail the executives that did this, those executives then turned around and locked up the top of the hour ad break, which comes at the top of every hour. It's a 3-minute ad break right now. Here it is. Yeah, sorry to spoil it. Okay, spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. You know, this is something that you should know already because I've interviewed Steven Donziger already.
Now, the initial problem was that this oil company was in control of the Ecuadorian government for decades. So they got the government to sign something called the Act of Liberation, which made it illegal for anyone from Ecuador to sue them, which I didn't know was possible. I mean, on that note, Chevron, if you're watching, by watching this, you legally forfeit your right to sue us. Okay, glad that's out of the way. So the cards were stacked against the Ecuadorians, but nonetheless, Stephen started their 30-year fight with Chevron. Now, he may have had 54 independent judicial site inspections resulting in 64,000 chemical sampling results showing pollution, but you could say Chevron had a bit of an ace up its sleeves. The ace was $262 billion. So in order to silence the indigenous Ecuadorians, they hired 60 law firms and 2,000 lawyers, which, in case you didn't know, is this many people, which means Chevron ended up spending over $3 billion in this case. Now, when a company like Chevron puts 2,000 of the world's most expensive lawyers in the same room, you end up getting bombarded with mountains and mountains of useless paperwork. Each page is specifically designed to clog up whatever court has to read them. Every single page needs an answer, and it costs your legal team thousands of dollars to answer them. Their aim is to simply outspend you until you have no choice but to drop the case. Now, Stephen wasn't only running out of money, but the 30,000 Ecuadorians that he was representing were all dying of toxic contamination. So if they stalled for long enough, Stephen wouldn't have any clients left. Now, Stephen's team was trying to sue them in front of a jury in the US. And
$3 billion is probably way more than cleanup costs. Yeah, but also down the line, if they don't pack it up, then it's going to obviously, one, it's going to kickstart a landfall of other similar points of litigation from many of the other countries that they exploit in similar fashion. So you can't do that. You can't set precedent that this kind of thing is prosecutable.
Chevron sure as hell didn't want that. So after 10 years of stalling, Chevron eventually won and got to choose to do the prosecution back in Ecuador, a tiny country with no real power to enforce any rulings. And then the next 8-year battle began. Now, Chevron didn't just stall and outspend Stephen. They got even sneakier. They went so far as to set up fake laboratories. They would pose as independent labs who studied soil samples and coincidentally concluded that there was actually no pollution in the Amazon. But it turns out they belonged to Chevron, and thanks to a group of brave whistleblowers, the truth got out. Now, we've covered Australian whistleblowers a lot on our channel, and a lot of our friends have been sued and imprisoned for doing the right thing. But these guys are on a whole new level. Like, when you get in the way of Chevron in a third world country, you usually get tortured and murdered. Like one of the main Indigenous representatives for this Chevron case, Pablo Fajardo, he was receiving death threats as soon as he joined the legal team, and as a warning, his brother was tortured and killed and the government refused to investigate it.
Es este lugar donde está sepultado mi hermano. Mi hermano murió 8 días antes de que realicemos la primera inspección judicial del caso Texaco. Le habían torturado fuertemente, cortado su rostro, no tenía nada en la cabeza, no se le conocía, no se le identificaba. Alguna vez un informe militar le dijeron a uno de mis hermanos que a quien buscaban era a mí.
But in the face of all this brutality and corruption, the people of Ecuador just kept fighting and they won. Like, it's insane. Chevron was ordered to pay $9.5 billion to the people of Ecuador. Like, David beat Goliath. This had never happened before. It was a landmark ruling, like one of the biggest cases in world history.
Except, you know, that also got held up in the court.
And somehow the indigenous Ecuadorians beat one of the world's biggest corporations. But it was time for the next ace up Chevron's sleeve. Also money. It was also money. They lobbied the US government to sanction Ecuador. They pulled all of their assets out of the country before the court could seize them, knowing that they were so rich and powerful that no other country would dare enforce Ecuador's ruling.
Their top lawyer famously said in 2009 that we will never pay a penny of this judgment. We will fight this until hell freezes over, and then we will fight it out on the ice.
I mean, look, considering that they're polluting the planet, maybe, you know, hell will freeze over pretty soon.
Yeah, that might come sooner than we think.
So now, after 18 years of fighting, Stephen's team has to chase Chevron around the world, trying to find a country that would enforce this judgment and finally make Chevron pay for purposely destroying these people's lives. In the meantime, the Amazon still looks like this. You know, this giant Western company drenched it in toxic waste, and the few bits of the Amazon that are still pristine are now reserved for rich Westerners who just and vomit all over the rainforest floor while trying to find themselves on an ayahuasca trip. But if you think that's bad, things are about to get much, much worse for the Ecuadorians. Chevron knew full well that if they ended up paying this judgment, they'd set a precedent, right? Their whole business model, like the way they make insane profits is by just like going into a country, sucking up all their resources for as cheap as possible, and then just dumping the waste wherever they want. And then they leave the local communities to pay the price, right? If Chevron pays $9.5 billion to the Ecuadorians, soon every single community they've destroyed around the world will start asking for money. So they decided to make an example out of Stephen to, you know, scare other lawyers from doing what he's done. So they took him to court in the US and claimed that he had bribed an Ecuadorian judge personally to rule against Chevron. And to prove that, they got this guy called Alberto to kind of stand up in front of the court and just, you know, say that that's what Stephen did. Now, here's the catch. Alberto said that during Stephen's case, and then 3 years later, he admitted under oath to an international tribunal that Chevron paid him more than $1 million to lie about Stephen, which is insane. But the crazy part isn't the $1 million lie. It's the fact that it took 50 days to coach this man on how to present fake testimony, which, you know, I know there are so many wild parts of this case, but 50 days, like paying the world's most expensive lawyers for 50 days just to teach this guy how to recite a lie. I mean, is he an idiot? Like, how does it take him 50 days to learn how to lie? Like, I swear it should take a day. Like, in fact, I've hired an Ecuadorian man to prove how easy it is. And to replicate the stress of a courtroom, I've also taken his clothes off.
Esteban gave me lots of money. He is very, very bad man. Also, Chevron is very good company.
Brillante, Diego. Eres muy talentoso. No jodas, solo 15 minutos. Diego, venga. Eres muy talentoso. Bravo, Diego. Bravo.
But anyway, Alberto told his $1 million lie and tricked a jury into ruling against Stephen. Well, actually, no, it wasn't a jury. It was all decided by this one guy, Judge Louis A. Kaplan, who's coincidentally funded by Chevron, but that's for later in the story. For now, Alberto is kicking back in California, receiving a lifetime salary from Chevron, and Stephen found himself in a whole lot of legal trouble. He got his law license revoked. Like they froze his bank accounts and they took his apartment. Like they literally took the clothes off his back and probably like the pants off his legs. Also maybe his underpants off his penis or something. And so Chevron wasn't done. So they got old mate Judge Louis A. Kaplan to take another crack at him. And just on a side note, why does he look like that? Like why does every single ghoul who sells their soul to a big corporation end up looking like this? What's going on? Like, I don't understand. Is this what happens when you make a deal with the devil? It's hideous. Anyway, so Judge A. Kaplan, Big Louis, he wants to confiscate Stephen's laptop and phone, which Stephen obviously appealed because of, lawyer-client confidentiality, but also ethically. The last thing you want is to give Chevron a list of every single Ecuadorian who stood up to them and exactly what they said. So while Stephen was appealing it, the judge went to the US government and said, look, this guy's disobeying court orders. You need to prosecute him for contempt of court.
And will Chevron be doing considered economic and chemical warfare in any way? If so, take it to the international courts. What are you talking about? Who's going to prosecute Chevron, brother? They are literally more powerful than any international court. They can't even get a goddamn government. Chevron is bigger than America. What are you supposed to do?
And the US government, to their credit, were like, no way, like we're not getting our hands dirty with Chevron's corrupt case, just leave us out of it, right? And in most countries, this would be the end of the story, right? If the government doesn't want to prosecute you, then you're free. But this wasn't a normal country. The judge actually managed to run a private criminal prosecution for the first time in US history. This is where a private company can take over the government's job and decide who goes to jail themselves. So essentially, if you're rich enough to pay for a court...
Like, this is after there was no criminal prosecution. Like, prosecutors were like, yeah, we're not going to do this. This is insane. So they were like, okay, I guess we'll do it ourselves.
For all intents and purposes, you're the government now. And you don't even need to have a jury. The judge you hire gets to decide. Now, it's bad enough to have a private company sending someone to jail. But what's worse is that everyone who's meant to be independent is actually on Chevron's payroll. The original judge who decided this was a Chevron investor, and the law firm he had handpicked for the private prosecution, Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, was paid $3 million from Chevron just before they started prosecuting Stephen. And there's even more law firms linked to this. Like, it's insane how these law firms are so good at breaking the law. Like, I think it's just like when you have a business that is just a bunch of last names in a row, people take you more seriously. Like, it's easier to get away with stuff. I don't know. But anyway, there's a lot of info out there on like exactly how Chevron funded these companies. But if you think that's exciting, then you're a nerd. Most people don't want to hear about that. But if you're interested, it's all in the video description. But in short, the government gave prosecutorial power to a private company, Chevron, which now can decide who they want to put in jail. And they can use that against Stephen. And while they're deciding on this, Stephen's, locked in his house with no money.
He put an ankle bracelet on me. And I couldn't leave my apartment, couldn't go to dinner, couldn't hang with my son, couldn't go to games. And I remember a good friend of mine came over, I'd been on house arrest for a month. She's like, when you reach 100 days, we should do like a press release. She tells me this. I'm thinking to myself, are you crazy? This isn't gonna last 100 days. 100 days came, she was right, she knew something. 200 days came.
Being under house arrest for, was like 1,000 days, how long were you?
993 days. So
just under 1,000. That's lenient, that's nice.
Yeah, no, I know, yeah.
Now look, I'm not a lawyer, but I have done a lot of crimes. And to me, this sounds like a crime, right? Like locking someone up for 993 days, without being convicted of anything, sounds like kidnapping. But it gets worse.
And they sued me for $60 billion. Okay. So I got sued for the most amount of money of any individual in the history of the United States. And just so people understand a little bit about me, I'm like a normal human rights lawyer. I have very little money.
You don't have $60 billion lying around?
No. I mean, they sued me for more money than any bank has been sued for, any oil company's been sued for, and I'm just a lawyer, sitting in my 2-bedroom apartment in New York with my wife and son. I mean, it was the craziest shit.
So after almost 1,000 days under house arrest, Chevron obviously convicted him of contempt of court and sent him to prison, which, is unusual for a misdemeanor. But what's even weirder is that they managed to sentence him for 4 times the maximum sentence.
So prison was crazy. I was scared that honestly they would kill me in prison. Because given how irregular everything was and how corrupt the shit that had gone down, I'm like, my God, if I go to prison, I'm going to be completely vulnerable.
Yeah.
they could arrange for me to die, for a guard to kill me, or they could charge you with another crime, keep me there forever.
Now, unfortunately for Chevron, they didn't manage to kill him in prison. But in fact, the prison was actually more on Stephen's side than he expected. Like the prison management was just embarrassed to have this obviously innocent man in a maximum security prison on a misdemeanor.
And it was horrible PR having, constant protests and visits by celebrities and politicians and multiple reports from Amnesty International and the UN. The prison wanted him out of there.
But the prisoners, on the other hand, wanted him to stay.
Several of the inmates gave me a nickname, the counselor, because they would come up to me and want advice on their cases. My response, I thought, look, you don't want advice from me. I'm a really bad lawyer. You never want to get advice from a lawyer who he himself is in prison. Trust me, you don't want my advice. But I'll listen to your story. So people thought that was really funny, so they started to call me the counselor. You could get anything in prison if you had the money. And I eat a lot of vegetables, and the word was the food budget had been running out, so there were no vegetables, no fresh vegetables in the prison. Everything was processed, gross food, not a lot of it. I was losing weight rapidly. So I asked this very well-known inmate who was a mob guy, who was super respected in the prison. I said, do you know where I can get a carrot? I said, all I want is a damn carrot. And he goes, counselor, give me a couple of days. So one day, he starts shuffling down the hall at night, and he goes, here, and he pulled out the biggest, dirtiest carrot I'd ever seen. It was it was just lifted out of the ground 5 minutes before. It had dirt all over it.
Wasn't in his ass?
Yeah. How do you smuggle that? Yeah.
I'll tell you what, he's like, here's your carrot. So I washed it, ate a couple bites. I'm like, I'm gonna sort of try to eat this little by little every day for 10 days. It was enormous. It was such a good carrot. So this is the funny part. I finished the carrot. A couple days later, every night at 9 o'clock, you have to stand in front of your cell, and the guards come in and they literally count one by one with those little things, 1, 2, 3, everyone in the prison. So I'm standing in front of my cell, and I look down at the end of the hall, and the guard who was running the count, I thought I saw a carrot in his hand. And the crazy, at the end of the hall, there was this big trash bin. I saw him, or I thought I saw him toss the carrot into the trash bin. So I'm like, when the count ends, I'm gonna go see if I can dig that carrot out. But I'm but the other thing about prison is, it's really clean. The inmates keep everything hyper clean, and if you have germs or don't keep clean or take food out of a trash bin, you're not really highly regarded.
Yeah, right.
So I'm okay, I gotta go see if it's a carrot. If it is, pull it out without anyone seeing me, okay? So I walk down, I'm looking, I'm that's a carrot.
Nice.
And it's a big one too. But I'm looking around, I couldn't pull it out. So I went back to my cell, I'll come back in 10 minutes and everybody goes to bed. Came back in 10 minutes and God damn it, the trash bin had filled up and someone had taken it out. So I lost the carrot. But the point is, a normal human being in prison became so desperate for food that I was literally ready to dive into a trash can to get a carrot. No, it's the craziest shit. And I thought to myself, what are you becoming? Yeah. Because when you're in that environment, there's a shortage of food, shortage of love, shortage of education, shortage of opportunity. Everyone's abused. You create the characteristics you need to survive in that environment. And I felt myself changing.
Yeah. Wow.
And I was really happy to get out of there.
Yeah, I can imagine. Although telling that story, I'd eat a carrot after.
Yeah. But I bet not in prison.
No.
Listen, nothing against eating carrots out of bins. I'm ready to do it, I went from Harvard Law School with Barack Obama to jumping into a trash bin in a prison to get a carrot. That was really incredible if you think about it.
So Stephen did his time and finally got to be reunited with his family. He was technically free, but Chevron succeeded in completely destroying his life and made it impossible for him to continue his work with the Ecuadorians.
I'm not locked up, but think about it. I can't leave the country, I have no passport. I can't work, I have no law license. And I can't transact business, I have no bank account. And I can't work even a non-law job because I owe them money and they could take the money. So you're looking at I don't know how to describe it, I'm a half citizen.
Yeah. Now this is all incredibly depressing. Stephen's life was destroyed because he dared to do the right thing. But here's the good part. You can fix this. Now, in our last whistleblower video, David McBride was about to go to jail and he didn't have money to appeal the sentence. Then we posted our video and had a link to his chuffed crowdfunding page. So you guys raised $90,000 for his legal fund in the first 3 days. Like, I didn't know we could do that. Like, how is that possible? It's insane. He was completely broke and he was facing down like a corrupt government. He was going to go to jail like for ages. And you guys gave him the money to launch an appeal. Like, you did that. Like, it's insane. So we've partnered with Chuff for this video to show the people in power that we can do it again. Right? Like, this community has turned YouTube into a weapon for the most disadvantaged people on earth. So click the link in the description and donate whatever you can to Donziger's legal fund. And we can fight back against Chevron and get them to pay for what they did to the people of Ecuador. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but we actually have the power to influence this. Like, we've done it before. Like, if the Ecuadorians win this, we have a viable model to make corporations pay for their crimes around the world.
I just want to say, like, even though the communities in Ecuador have not collected the money yet, they are going to collect the money. It's not so much the
UC Davis chatter, Stephen Donziger, the lawyer in the video, will be coming to speak next Tuesday.
10 billion, although they don't want to pay it. It's the model that produced the 10 billion. Yeah. They sort of see this case as potentially opening up the floodgates to a huge amount of global liability because they're guilty of pollution all over the world. Yeah. And they don't want this to be replicated in other countries.
Now, look, I know what you're thinking. I don't live in the Amazon. It's just an obviously made up place full of fake animals. I mean, what's this thing? It looks like bad AI. The whole place is supposedly populated with these obviously fake creatures. But this isn't just an issue for the Amazon.
Wow, what a flex. What a flex.
Chevron keeps doing the same shit wherever they can get away with it, like here in LA. Now, if you spend any time in the poorer areas of LA, you'll see oil wells right next to some unfortunate person's house. But in rich areas, they'll legit build fake hollow office buildings and hide all their operations inside there. Like this. It's a fake building full of oil wells and no one knows about it.
Excuse me. Do you know what's in this building?
Yeah, that's... Dude, is that your house? No, dude. What the
No, it's
you think I'd let them film near my house? What are you, insane?
50 oil wells inside. They're pumping oil, but it's like a fake building. It's really weird.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
It's my guest house, chat. Duh.
It's like a fake building, and then they've just got all these oil wells in, but they have to like make it look like a building.
That is crazy. We just walk past it and not even have an idea.
I'm staring at it, I'm like, there are no windows.
It's no windows. It looks like a building, like to your brain, like if you just see it but don't pay attention. Then when you look really.
That's my house. That's my. This right here is literally my building. Like, I own it.
Look, there's no windows, there's no doors, there's nothing. So I think it's
It's really funny. It doesn't say it's an oil well. It just says natural resources, but all it says is no smoking. I wonder what's going on.
Something's going on now because look at you.
Yeah, where
What's
it says.
going on?
There's like 50 oil wells in there, but it looks like a normal building. You know, I
I'm
think the building's
Chevron.
just like a shell.
We heard about it, we just want to see it.
Yeah,
Do you think most people know what's in there?
These fake buildings are everywhere in Beverly Hills. They even have an oil pump hidden in a high school, which they call the Tower of Hope, which is hilarious because, like, what's a Tower of Hope? Like, what is this thing? Like, why is it making noises? Why does my head hurt when I stand near it? I mean, people only realized it was an oil pump when it randomly caught fire. Now, while living next to an operational oil well is, catastrophic for your health, the bigger issue is that, just like in the Amazon, the government is so corrupted by oil money that they let Chevron do whatever they want. Once they suck up as much oil as they like, they just disappear and leave these open, toxic holes there. Because, it's cheaper than actually closing the well. And these abandoned wells are all over the city. Usually what happens is your family will be breathing this stuff in every day, your 9-year-old daughter will start getting random nosebleeds or something, and eventually she'll lose the ability to walk. But that's only if you're lucky. If you're unlucky, toxic sludge will literally burst out of these abandoned wells and destroy your home. And you'll be in the same position as the indigenous Ecuadorians. The companies responsible will never compensate you, and they'll send you to jail themselves without a jury if you try to get your money. Now, Chevron's playbook is the same all over the world. Like, this is a global issue. It affects everyone, right? And we haven't even spoken about climate change and the fact that burning these fossil fuels is like cooking our planet in the long term. We're talking about Chevron fucking our planet in the short term. Like, these companies, they come in, they take all our stuff for free, they don't pay any tax, and they just...
Okay, but have you considered that an executive is making a tidy profit? But what about the dividends? These commies, dude. Never even once considering marginally increasing shareholder value. Think of the shareholders. Yeah, you won't.
Dump toxic waste wherever they want because our governments are too scared to enforce any rules. But the good news is that Chevron is scared of us. They're scared of vulnerable communities getting together and getting organized. They're scared of, lawyers who represent them, and they're scared of us, the people who support them. So click the link in the description and make Chevron pay.
Also,
if the oil wasn't pumped out, it could ignite. Very dangerous. They're doing us a favor. Yes.
if you want to help fund more videos like this, please go to the Boy Patreon. You get a full video every month and access to the Discord community where you can chat with the boys and have a say in their future videos.
By the way, since the video came out, they've raised our over $100,000. Here's the link: tough.org/campaign/free-donzinger/bb boy. Here it is. There you go.
Videos.
Energy firms face legal threat over Israeli license to drill gas off Gaza. I bet it feels good as for the oil to be sucked out of the earth like that. I'm glad to suffer endlessly and have the entire future destroyed in flames just so the oil gets to feel like that once. Yeah, me too. Bro, chat already broke the link. Jesus Christ, chat. How? God damn it. Okay, well, revisit the link after, okay? Revisit the link after the stream. Bookmark it for later. Yeah, y'all broke it. Look at this shit, dude. Look at this. Wishing I got sucked by big oil. Yeah, me too. Just, it feels good as for Mother Earth getting her ate like that. Anyway, great video from the boys. We got the, yeah, I actually I just DDoSed the link because I'm in the pocket of Chevron. Chevron exec ran a skit with a class of mine in college in 2009. They had the class split into teams. Locals, including the politicians, media, 2 oil companies, 1 Western, 1 Eastern Russia. They were literally getting us to run an experiment and do research on overcoming local pushback. Y'all know I'm in the pocket of big oil. You already know what it is, baby. You already know. Anyway, that's all for me for today.